Sinn Féin is one of the most recognizable names in Irish politics, but it is also one of the most historically layered. The party is active on both sides of the Irish border, in the Republic of Ireland and in Northern Ireland, which remains part of the United Kingdom. Its name means roughly "we ourselves," a phrase that captures a central idea in Irish Republican politics, that Ireland should determine its own future. Today, Sinn Féin describes itself as Irish Republican and Democratic Socialist. It competes in elections, leads major political offices, and presents itself as a party of government. But its journey to that position runs through revolution, partition, civil war, decades of marginalization, the Troubles, and the peace process that reshaped Northern Ireland. The original Sinn Féin organization was founded in 1905 by Arthur Griffith. At the time, Ireland was still under British rule, and different nationalist movements debated how independence, or greater self-government, should be achieved. Griffith's vision was not initially the same as the later revolutionary Republican movement, but Sinn Féin became a banner under which various nationalist and separatist forces gathered. Its early importance grew dramatically after the Easter Rising of 1916, even though the party itself had not organized that rebellion. In the years that followed, Sinn Féin became closely identified with the demand for an independent Irish republic. By the 1918 general election, it had become the dominant force among Irish nationalists, replacing the older Irish Parliamentary Party. After its sweeping electoral success in 1918, Sinn Féin MPs refused to sit in the British Parliament at Westminster. Instead, they gathered in Dublin and formed the First Dáil, a revolutionary Irish parliament. This was a major act of political defiance. It claimed that Irish sovereignty came from the Irish people, not from London. Members associated with Sinn Féin also played central roles in the Irish War of Independence, fought between 1919 and 1921. During that conflict, the party was closely associated with the Irish Republican Army of that period. The political and military wings were not identical, but they were deeply intertwined in the struggle against British authority. Sinn Féin became linked not just with elections, but with the creation of a rival state. The settlement that followed the War of Independence divided Irish republicanism. The Anglo-Irish Treaty created the Irish Free State, a self-governing dominion within the British Empire, while Northern Ireland remained within the United Kingdom. For some, the treaty was a stepping stone toward fuller independence. For others, it betrayed the republic declared in 1919 and accepted partition. Sinn Féin split over this question before the Irish Civil War, and the divide had lasting consequences. The pro-treaty side evolved into Cumann na nGaedheal, which later merged with other groups to form Fine Gael. The anti-treaty side eventually produced Fianna Fáil, led by Eamon de Valera. These two parties went on to dominate politics in the Republic of Ireland for much of the 20th century. After these splits, the remaining Sinn Féin organization was much smaller than the movement that had transformed Irish politics in 1918. For decades, it often had little or no parliamentary representation. It continued to claim continuity with the Republican tradition and maintained an association with the Irish Republican Army, but it was no longer the main vehicle of political power in the South. The Irish state developed largely under parties that had emerged from Sinn Féin's earlier divisions, while Sinn Féin itself occupied a more marginal and uncompromising space. One of its defining policies was abstentionism, running for seats in parliaments it did not recognize as legitimate, while refusing to take those seats if elected. This position expressed principle, but it also limited political influence. A major turning point came in 1970, at the beginning of the period known as the Troubles. This was a violent conflict centered in Northern Ireland, involving Irish Republicans, Loyalists, British state forces, and deep communal division between nationalist and unionist communities. Sinn Féin split again. One faction developed into what became known as modern Sinn Féin, associated with the Provisional Republican movement. The other faction eventually became the Workers' Party. This split reflected disagreements over ideology, strategy, and the place of armed struggle in Republican politics. From this point forward, the Sinn Féin most people refer to today became closely associated with the Provisional Irish Republican Army, especially in public perception and political debate. During the Troubles, Sinn Féin's role was intensely controversial. It was associated with the Provisional IRA, which carried out a long-armed campaign aimed at ending British rule in Northern Ireland. Supporters saw Sinn Féin as the political voice of Republican communities who experienced discrimination, state violence, and exclusion. Critics saw it as inseparable from paramilitary violence. In both the United Kingdom and Ireland, broadcasting restrictions limited how Sinn Féin representatives could be heard on radio and television for significant periods. The party did contest elections and won local council seats, but it remained outside key parliamentary institutions because of abstentionism. Its presence was political, electoral, and symbolic, but still constrained by conflict and by the party's own strategy. When Gerry Adams became party leader in 1983, Sinn Féin increasingly emphasized electoral politics. This did not mean an immediate break with its Republican tradition, but it did signal a strategic shift. The party began to focus more seriously on building support through campaigns, local representation, and public organization. One major moment came in 1986, when Sinn Féin voted to end abstentionism toward Dáil Éireann, the Parliament of the Republic of Ireland. This meant that if Sinn Féin candidates were elected to the Dáil, they could take their seats. Not everyone accepted the change. Opponents left to form Republican Sinn Féin. But the decision marked a crucial step toward Sinn Féin becoming a conventional electoral party in the South. The 1990s transformed Sinn Féin's position more than any period since the early 20th century. Under Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness, the party became deeply involved in the Northern Ireland peace process. This was a long and difficult attempt to move from armed conflict to negotiated politics. It required engagement with the British and Irish governments, unionist parties, nationalist parties, and international mediators. The result was the Good Friday Agreement of 1998. The agreement created a new power-sharing system in Northern Ireland, including the Northern Ireland Assembly and Executive. Sinn Féin accepted participation in these institutions, while continuing to argue for Irish unity. The party moved from the margins of conflict politics into the center of a new constitutional settlement. Power-sharing changed Sinn Féin's practical role. Instead of only protesting or opposing institutions, it now had to help run them. In Northern Ireland, government depends on cooperation between unionist and nationalist representatives, reflecting the region's divided society. Sinn Féin became one of the main nationalist parties within that system. A further milestone came with the St Andrews Agreement in 2006, when Sinn Féin agreed to support the police service of Northern Ireland. This was hugely significant because policing had long been one of the most sensitive issues for Republicans and many nationalist communities. Supporting the police marked another stage in Sinn Féin's transition from revolutionary Republican movement to institutional political actor. In Northern Ireland, Sinn Féin's growth eventually produced a historic breakthrough. From 2007 to 2022, it was the second largest party in the Northern Ireland Assembly, behind the Democratic Unionist Party. Its nominees served as Deputy First Minister, a title that sounded subordinate but, under the power-sharing rules, carried equal authority with the First Minister. Then, in the 2022 Assembly election, Sinn Féin won the largest share of first preference votes and the most seats. It was the first time an Irish nationalist party had become the largest party in Northern Ireland. In 2024, Michelle O'Neill became the first Irish nationalist First Minister of Northern Ireland, a symbolic moment in a state originally created with a unionist majority. Sinn Féin's position is more complicated at Westminster. The party contests elections to the House of Commons, and since the 2024 election it has held 7 of Northern Ireland's seats. But it continues to follow abstentionism there, meaning its MPs do not take their seats. The reason is both symbolic and constitutional. Taking a seat at Westminster requires an oath or affirmation connected to the British monarchy, and Sinn Féin rejects British parliamentary authority over Northern Ireland. Critics argue this leaves constituents without voting representation in the Commons. Supporters argue that abstentionism is a clear expression of Irish Republican principle, and that Sinn Féin's mandate is based on voters who understand that policy before they cast their ballots. In the Republic of Ireland, Sinn Féin has also become a major force. It is no longer a small party on the edge of the political system. In Dáil Éireann, it is the main opposition, having won the second largest number of seats in the 2024 election. Its rise has challenged the long dominance of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, the two parties that trace their roots back to the old Sinn Féin split over the treaty. Mary Lou MacDonald, who succeeded Gerry Adams as party president in 2018, represents this newer phase of the party's image, more focused on housing, public services, cost of living, and government readiness, while still committed to Irish unity and Republican identity. The story of Sinn Féin is not a straight line from past to present. It is a story of repeated reinvention, from early nationalist organization, to revolutionary movement, to divided legacy, to marginal Republican Party, to a central player in peace and government. Its history is inseparable from the biggest questions in modern Irish politics: sovereignty, partition, violence, legitimacy, and the future of the island. For supporters, Sinn Féin's rise shows the endurance of Irish Republican democracy and the possibility of political change through elections. For critics, its past associations remain impossible to separate from its present. Either way, Sinn Féin has moved from the edges of power to the heart of political debate in both Northern Ireland and the Republic. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.